Do you believe in God? The voice tore through the concert silence like a knife through paper. 1,000 people froze in their seats. A man with a wild beard and deep-set eyes stood in the middle of the crowd. His clothes were torn. His hands trembled. André Rieu stood frozen on the stage. His violin still pressed against his chin. His eyes grew wide. Do you believe in God, André? The audience didn't dare to breathe. A security guard took a step forward, but stopped when André raised his hand. Why do you ask that? André whispered into the microphone. The man smiled, but his eyes were full of pain. Because I don't anymore. Behind him, a 10-year-old boy held his mother's hand. Some audience members began to cry silently without knowing why. André slowly descended the stairs toward the crowd. Who are you? The man didn't answer with words, only with those eyes that said everything. And in that moment, something broke inside André Rieu. What came next wasn't written in any musical score. Carnegie Hall in New York City glittered under the evening lights. October had wrapped the city in warm colors, and the smell of hot pretzels drifted through the streets. Tonight's concert was sold out as always when André Rieu visited America. Luke stood at the edge of the plaza, his back against the cold wall of an old building. He wasn't welcome here. He knew that. People like him didn't belong among the sounds of applause and champagne. People like him were sent away, ignored, forgotten. But tonight, he couldn't walk away. He had seen the poster a week ago, taped to a bus stop where he often slept. That face on the poster, he knew it, those eyes, that smile. He knew them better than anyone else in the world. Sir, you can't stand here, said a security guard with a stern look. This is private property. Luke nodded and shuffled away. His feet hurt. Everything hurt these days. The doctors had told him his body was failing, slowly but surely. There was no more treatment, only time, and that was getting shorter. He walked past the line of waiting people at the entrance, women in elegant dresses, men in suits, children with shining eyes. They looked right through him as if he didn't exist except for one boy. A child of about 10 with light brown hair and curious eyes stared at him. The boy was named Tommy, though Luke didn't know that yet. Tommy tugged at his mother's sleeve. Mom, why doesn't that man have a coat? His mother pulled Tommy closer to her. Don't stare, honey. That's impolite. But Tommy kept looking, and Luke felt that gaze, the only one that had really seen him today. The doors opened and the crowd streamed inside. Luke remained behind on the empty plaza. He wanted to walk away, back to his place under the bridge by the Hudson River, but his feet wouldn't move. Then he heard a voice behind him. Aren't you coming inside? He turned around. An older woman with white hair and kind eyes was looking at him. She wore a simple blue coat and held 2 tickets in her hand. I don't have a ticket, ma'am. I can see that, she said with a smile. That's why I'm giving you this. She held out one of the tickets to him. Luke stared at the piece of paper as if it were gold. Why? Because someone once did the same for me, answered the woman. Her name was Margaret, a retired nurse who had lived alone for years in a small apartment on the Upper East Side. And because I think you need to be here tonight. Before Luke could protest, she pressed the ticket into his hand and walked away, disappearing into the stream of people. Luke looked at the ticket, row 7, seat 14, right in the middle of the audience. His hands began to tremble, not from the cold, but from something else, something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. He walked through the large doors inside. The warmth of the theater hit him. The smell of perfume and wine made him dizzy. He felt people's stares, judgments, questions, disgust. But he kept walking. Row 7, seat 14. He sat down between 2 women who immediately shifted a bit, lifting their noses. He tried to make himself small, invisible. The lights dimmed. The orchestra came onto the stage. And then he appeared. André Rieu in his characteristic white suit, with that smile that warmed thousands of hearts. He waved to the audience, picked up his violin, and began. The first notes of the Blue Danube filled the hall, and Luke began to cry. Not softly, not quietly, but with deep sobbing that broke loose from his chest as if they had been locked there for years. The woman next to him looked alarmed. Sir, are you all right? But Luke didn't hear her. He only heard the music. And in that music he heard something else, A voice from the past. "Luke, when we grow up, we'll play together on the biggest stages in the world." The voice of a boy he had known, a boy he had lost. Suddenly the music stopped. André Rieu stopped playing. He looked out into the hall, his eyes peering into the darkness, as if he had felt something that wasn't right. The audience waited, and in that silence, Luke stood up. His legs trembled, his heart pounded, but he stood up. "Do you believe in God?" he asked, his voice hoarse but strong enough to echo through the hall. Everyone turned around. André Rieu froze on the stage, his violin still in his hand. He stared at the man in row 7, and somewhere deep in his memory, something began to move. Luke took a step forward, his hands gripping the back of the seat in front of him to keep from falling. "Do you believe in God, André?" "Because I don't anymore." The security guard at the side began to move, but André raised his hand. "Stop!" The audience was dead silent. André slowly descended the stairs from the stage. His face was pale. "Why do you ask that?" "Because he should have saved me," said Luke, his voice breaking. "But he didn't. He let me fall, just like you did." André stopped halfway down the stairs. "What do you mean?" "You know who I am, André. Somewhere deep inside, you know it." But André shook his head. "I don't know you." Luke laughed, a sad, empty laugh. "No, of course not. People like me are forgotten." Tommy, the boy who had stared at Luke earlier, now stood up too. "Mom, I want to help." "Tommy, sit down," hissed his mother. But Tommy didn't listen. He walked toward Luke, his small hand extended. "Sir, are you okay?" Luke looked at the child, at those innocent, concerned eyes. And for the first time in years, he felt something other than pain. "Young man," he whispered, "ask your mother if she believes in miracles." André was now near him. Up close, Luke could see his face, older, more mature, but still the same eyes he had known when they were children. "Who are you?" André asked again. "You really want to know?" Luke took a deep breath. "My name is Luke Mitchell, and 30 years ago we were best friends." André's face turned deathly pale. The name hit him like a sledgehammer. Luke, the boy with the broken violin, the boy who sat next to him in class, the boy who promised they would become musicians together, the boy who disappeared after André went to Juilliard. "Luke," André whispered, his voice barely audible. "Yes," said Luke, tears streaming down his face. "It's been a long time, hasn't it?" And then something happened that no one expected. André Rieu, the man who had played for kings, who had entertained millions, who had conquered the world with his music, fell to his knees and began to cry. André couldn't stop crying. His shoulders shook. His hands covered his face. The orchestra sat paralyzed in their chairs. The audience didn't know what to do, but Luke remained standing. His own tears now stopped. He had no strength left to cry. "I thought you would come looking for me," said Luke softly, "after everything we had promised each other." André looked up, his face wet with tears. "Luke, I didn't know. I thought that you had given up, that I had forgotten you." Luke shook his head. "I never forgot you, André. Every day of the past 30 years I thought about you." Margaret, the woman who had given Luke the ticket, sat in row 3. Tears ran down her cheeks. She didn't know why she had done what she did, giving that ticket. But now she understood. This had to happen. Another woman stood up on the other side of the hall. She was older, in her 70s maybe, with white hair and deep wrinkles around her eyes. Her name was Betty Johnson, and she had lived on the same street as André and Luke when they were children. "I remember you two," said Betty, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You lived on Oak Street. You always played together on the street with those old violins." André turned to her. "Mrs. Johnson?" "Yes, boy, it's me, and I remember the day you made that promise." "What promise?" asked someone from the audience. Betty looked at Luke, then at André. "The promise that you would always take care of each other, that if one of you fell, the other would come back to pick him up." André's eyes grew wide. "That was so long ago." "But a promise is a promise," said Betty sternly. "Isn't it?" Luke sank back into his seat, exhausted. Tommy, the boy, went to sit next to him, his small hand on Luke's arm. "Sir, you look tired," said Tommy softly. "I'm more than tired, young man," whispered Luke. "I'm almost finished." "Finished with what?" But Luke gave no answer. André got up and walked slowly toward Luke. He crouched in front of him so they were at the same height. "Luke, what happened? Where have you been all these years?" Luke looked at him with empty eyes. "Where have I been? Everywhere and nowhere, André. After you left for Juilliard, I tried to find my own way. But my mother got sick. I had to take care of her. I couldn't go to school. I couldn't study. Why didn't you write to me? I would have come." "I did write," said Luke bitterly. 10 letters, 20, 30. You never answered." André shook his head. "I never received letters, Luke. I swear it." Luke stared at André, his eyes full of confusion. "You really never saw them?" "Never," whispered André, his voice broken. "Luke, I swear to you, if I had known you needed help—" "What would you have done?" Luke interrupted him. "You were busy with your career. You had no time for someone like me." "That's not true. You were my best friend. You were the reason I started making music." Luke laughed hollowly. "Beautiful words, André. But words don't fill empty stomachs. Words don't heal illness." Tommy looked at his mother. "Mom, why are they so sad?" His mother embraced him tightly. "Because life is sometimes not fair, sweetheart." André stood up and walked to the stage. He picked up his violin and came back. He sat on the floor next to Luke's chair and began to play. It was a melody they had made up together when they were 12, a simple song they had played on the streets of their old neighborhood for a few coins from passers-by. Luke recognized it immediately. His breath caught. "You didn't forget that." "I forgot nothing," said André while he continued playing. "I never forgot you, Luke. I often dreamed about you. I wondered where you were, what you were doing, but I didn't know how to find you. You could have gone to Oak Street to our old house." "I did," said André softly, 5 years after I left. But the house was empty. The neighbors said your mother had died and that you had left. Nobody knew where." Luke closed his eyes. The music flowed over him like warm rain. "I lived everywhere, Boston, Philadelphia, Chicago. I tried to find work, but it never lasted long, and then I got sick." "Sick?" "My body is giving up," said Luke simply. "The doctors say I don't have much time left." The hall was dead silent. Even the air seemed to have stopped moving. Tommy tugged at Luke's sleeve. "Sir, are you going away?" Luke smiled at the child. "Yes, young man, soon. But I don't want you to go away," said Tommy, his voice trembling. "Why not?" "Because you're sad and nobody should go away sad." Luke's heart broke again, but this time in a different way. He touched Tommy's cheek with his rough, trembling hand. "You're a special child, do you know that?" Margaret stood up again. She walked forward and knelt in front of Luke. "I know we don't know each other, but I want to give you something." She took a small note from her pocket and gave it to him. "This is my address. If you need a place to sleep, a warm meal, anything, come to me." Luke stared at the piece of paper. "Why would you do that?" "Because everyone deserves to live with dignity," said Margaret simply. "And because I had a brother who lived on the street. He died alone. I don't want the same thing to happen to you." André looked at Margaret, then at Luke. "You're coming to live with me." Luke shook his head. "I don't want charity. This isn't charity. This is a promise I should have kept 30 years ago." "It's too late, André." "No," said André determinedly. "It's never too late." He stood up and called to his orchestra. "You can go. The concert is over for tonight." Murmur went through the hall. André ignored it. He held out his hand to Luke. "Come, we're going home." Luke looked at the hand. Strong, warm, inviting, everything he had missed for the past 30 years. But he didn't take it. "Why did you do it, André?" asked Luke suddenly. "Why did you leave me behind?" "I didn't leave you behind." "Yes, you did. You went to that school and you forgot me. You built your life and your career, and you left me behind on the streets." "That's not true." "Then tell me this," said Luke, his voice rising. "If you didn't forget me, why did you never search? Why did you give up after one trip to Oak Street?" André opened his mouth, but no words came. "That's why," said Luke bitterly. "Because I wasn't important enough. Because you had new friends, more important people. And I was just the boy from before." "No, Luke, no." But Luke was already standing up. He pushed André's hand away and walked stumbling toward the aisle. "Wait!" cried André. But Luke walked on. Tommy ran after him. Sir, don't go away." Luke stopped at the door. He turned around and looked one last time at André. "Do you believe in God, André?" André hesitated. "Yes, I think so." "Good for you," said Luke. "Because I don't anymore. And do you know why? Because a loving God would never allow someone to fall as deep as I have fallen." And then he was gone. The theatre was silent as a grave. André stood in the middle of the aisle, his violin still in his hand, tears streaming down his face. Betty put her hand on his shoulder. "Let him go, boy. He needs to process this." "But he thinks I abandoned him," whispered André. "And you think it's all your fault," said Betty. "But maybe it's nobody's fault. Maybe it's just life." André shook his head. "No, I should have done more. I should have kept searching." Margaret came to him. "It's not too late." "How do you mean?" "He's still here. He's still in this city. Go to him. Make it right." André looked at the door where Luke had gone through. Then he looked at Tommy, who still had tears in his eyes. "You want to help him, don't you?" asked André to the boy. Tommy nodded vigorously. "Good," said André. "Then we're going to look for him together." The night was cold and dark when André, Tommy and Margaret searched the streets of New York. Tommy's mother, Sarah, had first been angry that her son wanted to help search, but when she saw the determination in his eyes, she gave in. She came along, her coat pulled tight against the wind. "Where would he have gone?" asked Sarah. "He slept under the bridge by the Hudson River," said Margaret. "I heard him say that earlier." They walked through the narrow streets of the old part of the city. The cobblestones were slippery from the rain that had fallen earlier. Cafes emptied. People hurried home. Nobody looked at the small group walking through the shadows, except Betty. The old woman had decided to come along too. She knew these streets better than anyone. She had lived here her whole life. "I know where he is," she said suddenly. "Where?" asked André. "At the old chapel on Bleecker Street. That's where they go when it rains. The priests let them in on cold nights." They hurried through the streets. The chapel loomed up from the darkness, a small old building with high windows and a wooden door that stood ajar. Inside burned a small light. André pushed the door open. The smell of incense and moisture met him. In the corner by a small candle sat Luke, his head resting against the wall, his eyes closed. "Luke," whispered André. Luke opened his eyes. "What are you doing here?" "I came to talk, really talk." "There's nothing to say." André walked to him and sat next to him on the cold floor. Tommy followed, his small body leaning warmly against Luke. "Luke, I want you to listen to me," said André. "Don't interrupt. Just listen." Luke sighed but nodded. "When I went to Juilliard, I was scared," began André. "Scared to death. I came from a poor family, just like you. I had no money, no connections, nothing. I didn't feel welcome. The other students laughed at me for my clothes, my accent, everything." Luke listened, his face expressionless. "I worked 3 jobs to pay for school. I slept 4 hours a night. I had no time for friends, no time for fun, only school, work, practice. That was my life." "That doesn't give you an excuse," mumbled Luke. "No, that doesn't give me an excuse," André admitted. "But it explains why I didn't come back. I was so focused on surviving that I forgot to live. And when I finally had time to go back to New York, you were gone." "I was still there," said Luke. "I was just invisible." Margaret knelt next to them. "Luke, may I ask you something?" "What? Why did you end up on the street? What really happened?" Luke closed his eyes. "My mother had cancer. We had no money for treatment. She didn't want me to give up school to take care of her, but I did it anyway. I worked at the docks, construction sites, everywhere they would take me." His voice broke. "But it wasn't enough. She suffered pain before she died, and I couldn't do anything. After her death, I had nothing left. No house, no family, no purpose. I drifted for years, and then I got sick." "What illness?" asked Sarah softly. "My heart is giving up, slowly but surely. The doctors say it's only a matter of weeks." Tommy began to cry. "But that's not fair." "No, boy, life isn't fair," said Luke, his hand stroking through Tommy's hair. "But that's how it is." "No," said André suddenly. "That's not how it has to be." Luke looked at him. "What do you mean?" "You're coming to live with me. I'll arrange the best doctor, the best treatment, everything you need." "André, I'm going to die anyway. Treatment won't make a difference anymore." "But dignity will," said André determinedly. You deserve to spend your last days in peace, surrounded by people who love you. Nobody loves me." "I do," said Tommy suddenly. Everyone looked at the child. "I love you," repeated Tommy. "Even though I just met you, you're kind and sad, and I want you to be happy before you go away." Luke's eyes filled with tears. "You're a special child." "And he's right," said Margaret. "We all want to help you." Betty nodded. "You're not alone, Luke. Not anymore." Luke looked at their faces. André, Margaret, Betty, Sarah and little Tommy, faces full of sincere concern and love. "Why?" he whispered. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you would do it for us," said André simply. Luke shook his head. "You don't know me anymore, André. I'm not the boy I was." "Yes, you are," said André. "I see it in your eyes. You're still the Luke who shared his last bread with stray dogs. The Luke who helped old people with their groceries. The Luke who promised we would change the world together with music. Those dreams are over." "No," said André. "They just stopped for a while, but we can give them new life." André's house in Manhattan was large and warm. Luke had never seen such a place, at least not from the inside. High ceilings, soft carpets, a fireplace that crackled with orange flames. "Welcome home," said André when they came in. Luke didn't feel at home. He felt like an intruder. Margaret had insisted on coming along to help Luke settle in. Tommy and Sarah had also stayed despite the late hour. It felt like a family, a strange, unlikely family, but still a family. "The bathroom is there," said André, pointing to a door. "Take a warm bath. I'll put out clean clothes." Luke stood trembling in the large living room. "This doesn't feel right." "What doesn't feel right?" "This, your help. It's like you're trying to buy off your guilt." André's face became hard. "Is that what you think? That this is about guilt? What is it then?" "It's about us, Luke, about what we were and what we still can be. It's not about guilt or pity. It's about friendship. We haven't been friends for 30 years. "That's not true," said André softly. "I never forgot you. Every time I stood on a stage, I thought about you. Every time I got applause, I heard your voice in my head. We're going to make it together, André. Together." Luke turned away. Beautiful words. "They're not words, they're the truth." Margaret came between them. "Luke, go shower now. You'll feel better when you're clean and have warm clothes on." Luke wanted to protest, but he was too tired. He walked to the bathroom, his feet dragging over the soft carpet. When the door closed behind him, André sighed deeply. "Do you think he'll ever forgive?" "That depends," said Betty, who sat in a chair by the fire. "On what?" "On whether you can forgive yourself." André looked at her. "What do you mean? You've been carrying guilt with you for years, boy. Guilt about your success while Luke suffered. Guilt about not coming back. Guilt about those letters you never received. But the truth is, it wasn't your fault. I could have done more. Maybe. Or maybe life had other plans. Sometimes things are just as they are. Not good, not bad. Just as they are." Tommy climbed onto the couch next to André. "Mr. Rieu, do you think Mr. Luke can be happy again?" André looked at the child. "I hope so, Tommy. I pray for it." "Do you believe in God?" asked Tommy simply. "Yes," said Tommy. "Mum says God always listens, even when we don't hear him answer." "Wise words," said André. Luke came out of the bathroom after half an hour. He looked different, cleaner but also more vulnerable. The clothes André had laid out were too big, but they were warm and soft. "Better?" asked Margaret. Luke nodded. "Thank you." "Come sit," said André, gesturing to the couch. "I made soup." They ate in silence. Luke ate slowly as if he expected someone to send him away at any moment. But nobody did that. After dinner they sat by the fire. Tommy had fallen asleep against his mother. Betty was dozing in her chair. "Luke," said André softly, "may I show you something?" "What?" André stood up and walked to a cabinet. He took out an old box and put it on the coffee table. "These are things I've kept from our youth." He opened the box. Inside were photos, old tickets, notes. "Look," said André. "A yellowed photo. This is us when we were 10. Luke stared at the photo. 2 boys with violins grinning at the camera. They stood in front of a small house on Oak Street. I remember that day, whispered Luke. We had just given our first performance. We earned $5, and we spent it all on candy. André laughed. You got sick because you ate too much, and you laughed at me. For the first time in years, Luke smiled. A real smile. André took out more photos. Each image brought back a memory. Good memories. Memories of two boys who wanted to conquer the world. Why did you keep all this? Asked Luke. Because it was the most beautiful time of my life, said André. Before money, before fame, before everything, there was you, and that time was perfect. Luke's eyes became moist. I thought you had forgotten me. Never. Not a single day. But you didn't come back. I did come back. You just weren't there anymore, and I didn't know how to find you. Luke closed his eyes. I was angry, André, so angry. I hated you. I understand. But I hated myself more because I wasn't strong enough. Because I gave up. You didn't give up, said Margaret suddenly. You survived. That's not giving up. Luke looked at her. But look at me. I'm nothing. You're everything, said Tommy, who had woken up. You're kind and sad and real. That makes you special. Luke laughed through his tears. How can such a small child be so wise? Children see the truth, said Sarah. They see past the lies that adults tell themselves. That night, Luke slept in a real bed. For the first time in years, the sheets were clean, the mattress soft, but he couldn't sleep. His thoughts swirled around the past, about André, about God. Do you believe in God? He had asked. And now he wondered. Did he still believe himself? He got up and walked to the window. The city below glittered with lights. Somewhere out there were other people like him. Lost, alone, hopeless. Can't sleep. He turned around. André stood in the doorway, dressed in a robe. No, said Luke. Me neither. André came in and sat on the edge of the bed. Luke, I want to ask you something. What? Do you really not believe in God anymore? Luke thought for a moment. I don't know. If God exists, why does he let people suffer? Why does he let people fall? Maybe he doesn't let us fall, said André. Maybe we just blame him when things go wrong. So it's my fault that I'm sick? My fault that my mother died? No, but maybe it's nobody's fault. Maybe it's just life. Luke shook his head. I can't believe in a God who allows... Then don't believe in him, said André. Believe in what you can see. And what do I see? I see friendship, hope, and love. And that's also real. 3 weeks passed. Luke now officially lived with André. The doctors had examined him and confirmed what he already knew. His heart was weak and there was little they could do, but they gave him medication to ease the pain and keep him comfortable. In those weeks, something special happened. Luke began to live again. Not physically because his body got weaker every day, but inside. He talked more, laughed more, remembered more. The days began to have a rhythm. Every morning, André and Luke had breakfast together on the terrace overlooking Central Park. They talked about their youth, about the dreams they had had, about the choices that had shaped their lives. Sometimes they just sat in silence, watching the people walking below, just like time itself. You know what I miss? Said Luke one morning, his gaze directed at the park. What? The simplicity. When we were children, everything was so simple. If we were hungry, we looked for food. If we were happy, we laughed. If we were sad, we cried. No masks, no lies. André nodded slowly. We lose that when we get older. We learn to hide our feelings, to mask our pain. You never did that well, smiled Luke. Your face has always betrayed everything. That's why I loved you as a friend. You were always real. And you were always brave. Even when you were scared, you pretended to be strong. For me, for your mother, for everyone. Luke's eyes became moist. I wasn't brave. I was just too proud to admit I needed help. That's also a form of courage, said André softly. The afternoon brought new visitors. An old school friend of Luke's came by, someone he hadn't seen in 20 years. The man named William had heard about Luke's situation through Betty. Luke, man, I thought you... I didn't know you were here, said William with tears in his eyes. I was everywhere and nowhere, answered Luke, but now I'm here. They talked for hours about old times, about classmates they had lost track of, about teachers who had inspired them. It was as if 30 years were wiped away with every word. Why did you never come back to the neighborhood? Asked William. Shame, said Luke honestly. I didn't want people to see me as I had become. But we could have helped. I know that now. But pride is a dangerous thing. It isolates you, makes you blind to the love around you. Tommy came by every day after school. He brought drawings for Luke, made up stories, played simple games. Luke always looked forward to those visits. The child had a way of bringing light to the darkest moments. One afternoon, Tommy brought his school project, a report about heroes. I wrote about you, Mr. Luke, he said proudly, opening the report. Luke read the words Tommy had written. My hero is Mr. Luke. He's not famous like Superman, but he's brave because he never gave up, even when life was hard. He taught me that real strength isn't about winning, but about keeping trying. Luke couldn't hold back his tears. Tommy, I don't know what to say. Just say you're proud of me, grinned Tommy. I'm more than proud. You're the most beautiful thing that's happened to me in years. Sarah, Tommy's mother, also began coming by more often. She brought meals, helped with housework, made sure Luke took his medication on time. She was quiet, but present, a rock of stability in Luke's fragile world. Why do you do all this? Luke asked her one day. Because my father also lived on the street, she said softly. I was too young to help him, too scared to go to him. He died alone under a bridge in Boston. I still carry that guilt with me. It wasn't your fault. And your situation wasn't yours either, she answered. But we carry the burden anyway, don't we? Margaret brought structure to Luke's days. She came every afternoon for tea, told stories about her work as a nurse, about the people she had helped, about the lessons life had taught her. You know, Luke, I saw myself in you that night at the theater, she confessed one day. How do you mean? I was also lost. After my brother's death, I felt guilty, as if I had let him down. But helping you, that gave me purpose again. So I helped you. More than you know. Sometimes the person giving help is also the one being healed. Betty came with old photo albums, full of images of the neighborhood where André and Luke had grown up. She pointed out people, told stories, brought the past to life. Look, this is Mrs. Rodriguez from the bakery. She always gave you free bread on Sundays. I had forgotten that, smiled Luke. And here, this is Mr. Thompson. He taught you violin before you went to music school. He was a good man, said Luke softly. He believed in me when nobody else did. The evenings brought peace. André and Luke often sat by the fire, sometimes playing their violins, sometimes just talking, sometimes in silence. You would have been a great father, said André one evening. Luke smiled sadly. I'll never know that. You're already a great friend to Tommy. He's a special child. Margaret also came regularly. She brought soup, sat with Luke, listened to his stories. She told him about her own brother, about how she had lost him, about the pain she still felt. But you're here, she said to Luke, and that's a gift. Betty visited with stories from the past. She reminded Luke of who he had been, a kind boy, a brave boy, a boy with dreams. Those dreams aren't dead, she said. They still live in André, in Tommy, in everyone you touch. One morning, Luke woke up with an idea. André, I want to do something. What? I want to make music with you one more time. André's face lit up. Really? Yes. I don't want to end with only regret and pain. I want to leave something beautiful behind. That evening, André organized a small private concert in his living room. He invited Tommy and his mother, Margaret, Betty, William, and a handful. People who had touched Luke's life in these short but intense weeks. In the middle of the room stood 2 chairs. André had arranged an extra violin, a simple one but good sounding. Do you think you can still do it? Asked André to Luke. Luke's hands trembled when he picked up the violin. I don't know. It's been so long. Try it. It's not about perfection. It's about the feeling. Luke put the violin under his chin. The familiarity came back. The weight, the shape, the way it rested against his shoulder. He closed his eyes and drew the bow across the strings. The first notes were shrill, false. His hands trembled too much, but he kept playing. André joined in, his own violin harmonizing with Luke's uncertain tones. Together they created something unique. Not perfect, but real. Tommy sat on the floor, his eyes wide with wonder. "It's beautiful," he whispered. Margaret cried silently. Betty smiled through her own tears. William clapped softly along with the rhythm. They played their old melody, the song they had written as children. It sounded different now, more adult, sadder, but also more beautiful. It carried the burden of 30 years of life, of loss and pain, but also of hope and forgiveness. When the song ended, there was a moment of deep silence. Nobody dared to move, afraid to break the magic. "Thank you," said Luke to André, his voice broken with emotion. "What for?" "For reminding me that I once meant something." André embraced him. "You still mean something. To me, to Tommy, to everyone here." That night, when everyone had left, André and Luke sat by the fire. The flames danced in the fireplace, cast shadows on the walls. "André, I have to confess something to you," said Luke. "What?" "When I stood up that evening in the theater and asked if you believed in God, I wanted to hurt you. I wanted you to feel as empty as I felt." "I know that," said André calmly. "But now I'm not sure anymore." "About what?" "Whether God really doesn't exist. Because if he doesn't exist, how do you explain this? This moment, this friendship, this peace I feel." André smiled. "Maybe that's the answer to your question." "Which question?" "Whether I believe in God? I believe in what I see. Love, forgiveness, hope. If that's God, then yes, I believe." Luke stared into the fire. "I think I do too. For the first time in years, I think I do too." The next morning, Luke didn't wake up. André found him peacefully lying in bed, a smile on his face. The doctor said his heart had simply given up during his sleep. Painless, quiet. Tommy cried for 3 days. "But he was just becoming happy," he sobbed. "That's the beautiful thing," said his mother. "He left while he was happy, that's all we can hope for." The funeral was small but full of meaning. André played violin while Luke's casket was lowered. Tommy laid a drawing in the grave, a drawing of 2 boys with violins smiling. "He would have found this beautiful," said Margaret. "He's free now," said Betty. After the funeral, André established a foundation in Luke's name. The foundation helped homeless people with medical care, shelter, and most importantly, dignity. Tommy grew up and became a musician, inspired by the story of the 2 friends. He often played the song André and Luke had written together, and every time he told the story behind the music. "This is for the people who fall," he always said before his performance, "for those who think they are forgotten, because nobody is forgotten, nobody is alone, and there is always hope." André continued giving concerts, but every concert he started with a moment of silence. "For my friend Luke," he always said, "who taught me that forgiveness is more beautiful than music." And on cold evenings in New York, when the wind howled through the streets, people swore they heard 2 violins playing, a perfect duet as it always should have been. Years later, on his deathbed, someone asked André, "Do you still believe in God?" André smiled. "Every day, because Luke taught me that God doesn't sit in church or in prayers. He sits in moments of forgiveness, in the strength of friendship, and in the love we feel for each other. That's where God lives." And with those words, he closed his eyes, knowing that wherever he was going, Luke was already waiting for him there, with his violin, his smile, and their shared dream. Because some friendships never end. They just change form, and the music plays on forever.